My name is Geraldine Galindo. I am an English teacher. I've been an English teacher for 10 years. I've been working in different contextual school settings, private, public, and of universities as well. During this research journey, my thesis advisor is Adolfo Arrieta Carrascal, and my teacher proposal has the title of Teachers' Perceptions over ICC in the Classroom, an Exploratory Case Study into Public Education in Caucasia, Antioquia. The introduction, or in order to start my presentation, I would like to focus on the teachers' perceptions towards ICC, especially teachers from the two different school settings, rural and urban schools. This study takes place in Caucasia, located in the subregion of Antioquia called Bajo Cauca. I decided to take it or carry out this study in these two schools because of the diversity tapestry that these two counties have, because of the special characteristics of this population, and of course because they are these two counties, they are going to bring me inside data and information for my study. Well, in the introduction, I started with a brief definition of what intercultural communication competence is. That is a set of abilities that allow us to get into effective communication in diverse cultural communities. Of course, it is really necessary to talk about this topic in our work, in our current work, because in our interconnected work, we are so immersed in the different platforms in which we are more exposed to know cultures about different cultures around the world, and it is necessary to have not only knowledge about the culture we have, but also others' knowledge and the attitudes that are needed to develop intercultural communicative competence in a more effective way. In Colombia, well, it is focused that the idea is that schools can each day to adapt this method or this construct, but some studies have shown that it is not that evident, especially in regions like the ones I chose for my study. Well, the problem statement starts with these factors: professional development, ICC integration, inclusive and cultural learning environment. But especially because you can see that maybe you can observe or read that in different studies, this intercultural competence in teachers' perspective, it is so usual to see. But if we go to those contexts that I have in my study, we can see that, for example, that the recommendations or maybe the policies makers are not evident yet that have been development of training session for teachers, because as I am going to show forward in the presentation, we are going to see that training sessions is one of the main factors that our teachers nowadays need more. The questions that will guide my study are this one, that is so big, that is how do teachers' perceptions concerning intercultural communicative competence influence in his integration in the classroom, and also I have 3 sub-questions that are going to help you to answer this big one. What are teachers' perceptions and meanings regarding intercultural communicative competence? What misconceptions could be evidenced in the teachers' perceptions concerning intercultural communicative competence, and what factors hinder the integration of intercultural communicative competence in the classroom? Significance of the study, all of them, please. Okay. Well, it is the significance turns around the necessity teachers have for training sessions, also for the adaptations of curricula, that is really necessary. The educators reinforce necessary application in the real world scenarios, because we are seeing many traditional methodologies in the language classroom, especially for rural schools, and also that we can recognize since from our teaching practices that we need to be more diverse and to have knowledge about what culture really means. Conceptual framework, where of course my main concept has to do with intercultural communicative competence that, as I said before, is a construct, is a multifaceted construct. Why multifaceted? Well, because depends of a variety of skills in order to develop an effective intercultural communicative competence construct that also surpasses the boundary of linguistics. It is not merely to refers to linguistic focus, but also everything that can go beyond attitudes, skills to adapt, to appreciate diverse cultures, to avoid judgments, but respect others diverse context. Also, it is necessary to mention the dimensions of ICC, that is cognitive dimension by according to Byron 2002 and Kanagaha 2001, has to do with the attitudes or the skills that people have in terms of what you know, how do you get familiarized with your values, with your culture, the knowledge of the culture you have about your own roots. Also, you have an affective dimension. When you have cleared this part, it's because you can develop, let's say, that sense of appreciation about others' cultures, because if we don't appreciate our own, it is impossible to be on the foot of others, and also be more empathetic, and we can adapt, have an adaptation according to the cultures where we come from. Behavioral dimension that has to do with, well, those skills that you need to make a communicative competence, intercultural communicative competence more proficiency, like a better listening, for a better behavioral listening for when you listen to others or interact with others. Also, don't make judgments, the way you express your words, and those kind of things. Okay. Here it is just a table or a chart that is going to like show you the studies I follow for my research. This one that just for mentioning them. And I am going to like make a big summary of what I found on these researchers. Where the tendencies and gaps that emerge in the literature concerning ICC. Well, in the international context where I could observe that ICC enjoys great importance among English teachers. They are really interested in trying to look for different methodologies or approaches in order to, let's say, integrate them to develop a better ICC competence in the language classroom. But they also agree that need for professional development is still necessary in the language classroom. Lack of teaching materials in the national context, for example, in Cuartas, that is 2022, he carried out a study where he made an intervention with three teachers in Medellin, Colombia, where through study groups they could, let's say, transfer the point of view of teachers according to ICC, because before having that intervention they didn't have an idea of what ICC was, and also they ignored some of the materials needed in order to, let's say, develop this kind of construct. And the predominance of Byron's framework to foster ICC, of course, studies try to implement Byron's framework because it's, let's say, that it's the most complete framework about intercultural communicative competence, and it is like something that is going to guarantee that in our classrooms this competence can be developed in a more effective way. Well, methodology. Well, I follow This study follows a qualitative research because as I am doing an exploration, so I need to have a clear understanding of a teacher's perceptions and views about intercultural communicative competence. It is especially an exploratory case study. Why a case study? Because a case study studies a complex phenomenon, and also it contextualizes two cases which are my two teachers from the two different class settings, school settings, and also it provides make sure theoretical consideration, data analysis procedure also followed by these like observations, interviews, follow this kind of methodology or studies approach. And what I said, the data collection methods I use over a 4-week period, semi-structured interviews, document revision, and observations. And of course, journals that accompany those observations. Yes. Well, my data analysis criteria. As it is a qualitative study, I follow content analysis. Why? Because this study or this kind of method will help us to have a better understanding of different artifacts like videos, audio transcripts. In this case, I had interviews, audio taping, and documents revisions, and all kind of artifacts that work for my study. In the context analysis, what I did was that I had those kind of papers and documents. I transcribed the interviews, and I started to analyze the patterns that were repeated in order to have like the big thing, like the big categories. After that, I started revising again. I could able to took out 3 main categories, and then in the second and the third categories, I was revising, trying to look for more subcategories, and I could able to identify. For example, in this case, of course, content analysis, it is necessary, mandatory, to make codifications. I did it with colors, not only with the interviews, but with the lesson plans, the curricula, and the journals and observation plan that I had during the sessions. And I labeled the different categories I were taking out. Well, teachers, the first categories were teachers' misconceptions concerning ICC because of the repeated patterns I found. After that, I could able to identify teachers' perceptions and meanings on ICC and factors hindering the incorporation of ICC in the classroom. These are the most general ones. But with teachers' perceptions and meanings on ICC, I wanted to explore more factors that could, let's say, explain better this category, and also the factors that could hinder the incorporation of ICC in the classroom. I could find that in teachers' perceptions and meanings from ICC, it was evident that ICC as vocabulary learning, it is part of the teachers' perceptions, that the perceptions that teachers have about ICC in the integration in the classroom, in the language classroom, and in intercultural communicative contexts as students' traditions and costumes. Also, factors hindering the incorporation, some factors that make difficult the incorporation of intercultural communicative competence in the classroom are teachers' misunderstanding of ICC, my grammar-based teaching style, and the absence of ICC in the Proyecto Educativo Institucional P. Where during the findings, the first category, teachers' perceptions and meanings, like the big constant in this study was that teachers are still confusing that culture has to do with the backgrounds, that students' costumes, traditions, behaviors, and that's it. What Byram called like folklore and festivals. That is the main perception they have about it. Where factors in the intercultural communication, according to what Byram suggests, now the different skills, knowledge, and attitudes, that let's say that this is the most complete structure in order to achieve an ICC more effective and complete, in order to get to this big goal that is to take students to critical awareness. Students, or sorry, the participant, rural teachers in this case, always have a contrast in what he says and what he does. Because maybe he said, okay, I do things related to cumbia, and I taught them how to do this and this, but during the classes and the practices, it was not evident because it was focused on grammar task-based activities. Well, in those settings, claim that the factor of a mismatch, as I said before, between teachers' intentions and practices. They said something during the interviews, but they were a little bit erroneous. But what I observed during the classes was totally different from what I heard. In this case, was everything about grammar activities, and that's it. Okay. In this case, we talk about what I said, what was heard, what was observed, factors hindering the incorporation. There is something really, let's say, interesting to see is that, for example, in the case of vocabulary, or I think that the contents taught during the classes where everything was given to students. Students were not able to investigate, to have like a different, like a moment in which they could do something different with the words, but the words given and the vocabulary given was the one that they have to use by the teacher. In this case, well, the teacher misunderstandings and grammar-based teaching style and the answers of ICC, I could, let's say, conclude that these factors, of course, hinder the incorporation of ICC in your classroom. Of course, if you don't know how to teach this construct, it is impossible that you can take it to a classroom in an effective way. You cannot teach what you don't know. Well, in this discussion, we have different authors that says that, well, we compare it with what they say about their studies and similarities they found about teachers' misunderstandings, and also the teacher's role associated with the goal of foreign language education by helping students to develop sense of interconnectedness. Finally, what this research proposal adds to existing literature is that it clearly explains how these perceptions teachers have influence in ICT teaching. What I wanted to show you here is that not only to tell you the perceptions that teachers have, because we already know that because we have seen in different studies and research. But what I wanted to show is how these perceptions could, let's say, make more difficult the implementation of ICC during the classroom. Because as I said before, you cannot teach what you don't know, and of course, if you don't know how to deal with this kind of methodology or approach or construct, it's going to be more difficult for your students to get this kind of skills. It is necessary, of course, training sessions for teachers, because as I said before, we have seen different recommendations of what teachers need to. That teachers need training sessions, for example, in the subregion of Caucasia, because maybe if I have done my research in Medellin, I would find different results. But in the subregion of Caucasia, teachers, because I work there, we are not exposed to different training. And what I want with this paper is the teachers that at least can read my paper, at least can have that desire of investigating more about intercultural communicative competence, and maybe policymakers can, I don't know, or government or Minister of Education can, let's say, look at those regions that need to be more trained and to have a better language setting in our classrooms. And these are my conclusions. It will be stated from data analysis. Interpretation that teachers use on ICC influence negatively is integration in the classroom. The incorporation of ICC was hindered by some pedagogic, as I said before, and most participants were accustomed to lecture-based and teacher-centered methods. Then that is what we want to change when I make an intervention. That's it.